Hello and welcome back to Write America, a literary series spearheaded by author Roger Rosenblatt in an effort to bridge the great divide in our country through readings and conversations from award-winning, nationally renowned authors and new and emerging writers. My name is Lauren. I am the publicist and event coordinator over at Book Review. For those of you not familiar with our store, Book Review is Long Island's largest independent bookstore. I am thrilled to be here with you this evening for another night of Write America, this time featuring writers Kirstin Valdez Quade and Nick Flynn. If you happen to miss last week's episode with George Howe Colt, Ann Fadiman, and Carl Phillips, you can go to Book Review's Crowdcast channel and watch the recordings at any time. This event is also going to be recorded, so if you happen to miss something, you can always go back and rewatch. So the recordings will live there all the time. But before we get started, I just want to let you know a little bit about Crowdcast, just in case this is your first time here with us all. So right beneath the stream down here, there is a blue button. If you click that button, it'll bring you right to bookreview.com, where you can purchase and pre-order signed copies of Nick and Kirstin's books. We can also pre-order their two books coming out. And let's see, there's also an Ask a Question button right down here. So if you have a question for Nick or Kirstin during the event, you can just drop it down below. We'll get to it at the end of the event. And then I see the chat. Oh, Jackie and John Leo want to know when I'm going to play the guitar. It's not going to happen. Maybe the ukulele, but not the guitar. I don't know how to play that. So if you have any comments at all, you can just drop them in the chat about the readings. You can drop your virtual emoji applause in there as well. So again, thank you all for tuning in, and we're going to get started. Our first reader tonight is Nick Flynn. Nick is the author of This is the Night Our House Will Catch Fire, which comes out in paperback this August. He's the author of 3 previous memoirs, including the Penn Joyce Osterweiler award-winning Another Bullshit Night in Suck City, and 4 volumes of poetry. He is a professor on the creative writing faculty at the University of Houston. Please welcome to the screen, Mr. Nick Flynn. Let's get him up here. Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Thanks so much for doing this. Are you going to vanish now? You'll vanish?
I'm going to vanish.
Okay.
I'll leave you to it. Bye.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm so thrilled to be asked by Roger to do this. I met Roger this summer virtually during a reading we did together, and I'm deeply enamored of Roger. He's an amazing human being, and his work is amazing. And now I've also got to meet Kirstin Valdez Quade also through this, which is another huge gift. And I've got to read her book, The 5 Wounds, which is basically, I feel like this is a celebration of this book because it's appearing in the world tomorrow. So we're, this might be the first event. We'll find out. But it's a gorgeous book. And I'm going to read a little bit from a couple of my books. The idea Roger had for this was sort of something to do with the state of the country at this moment. And I really wanted to think about what I could read that would address that. And then maybe Kirstin and I will talk about that also. I want to thank Lauren also. Thank you, Lauren, who's been steering this so beautifully. So, we've had 4 years of a total clown show, and now here we are in this new reality, so we can get some work done now. So I'm going to read, there's a poem that the Book Review put online on Twitter, one of my poems from a previous book. I thought I'd start with that. It's called Self-Exam, My Body is a Cage. Do this. Take 2 fingers. Push them into the spot behind your ear, the spot your skull drops off into that valley of muscle and nerve. This is the muscle that holds up the skull, that nods the dumb bone this way and that. When you think you understand, when you think you get it, press deeper into the gristle. Find that little bundle of nerves, the nerves that make you blink at daylight, that make your tongue slide in and out when you think you're in love, when you think you need a drink. Touch that spot as if you had an itch, as if it were a button, as if you were an elevator. Close your eyes and listen, please. Close your eyes. Can you hear it? We think our souls live in boxes. We think someone sits behind our eyes, lording from his little throne, steering the fork to the mouth to the tit. We think hungry children live in our bellies, clutching their empty bowls as the food rains down. We sometimes think we are those hungry children. We think we can think anything and it won't matter. We think we can think, cut out her tongue, then ask her to sing. That's from a book of mine called The Captain Asked for a Show of Hands. There's a whole conversation around that. Now I'd like to read it from Another Bullshit Night in Suck City, a passage from that. This is a book that I worked with the homeless for many years in my 20s. And while working there, I encountered my father, who was homeless, who became homeless while I was working there, and was homeless for about 5 years. So I'll read a little bit of this book. In the spirit of the work that we need to continue doing now that the country has a chance to do some work. A new map of the city has been created. Several maps, actually. Transparent layers. They can be laid one on top of the other. One shows only fire hydrants. Another only stoplights. Another each school. My map would show the places one could sleep if one was or became or planned to be homeless. It would show each bench, each church step, each bridge, each horizontal, each patch of grass. We asked Paul if he wants to go back to the shelter with us, but we know he won't go. No, he says. I'm just out here enjoying a little fresh air. I do my best thinking out here. We got him to talk to a psych doctor once. The doctor asked if he heard things other people don't. Sure, Paul answered. I hear birds in the morning when everyone's sleeping. I hear trees rustling when no one's around. We convinced Dennis to come for a ride. I lay a blanket on the seat, give him cigarettes, coffee. I say, let's go talk to someone about the Lord. He stares at the tip of his cigarette, murmurs into it. Oily light, steam rising from cracks in the asphalt, rivers of heat flowing beneath the streets, the center of the earth boiling, heat factories on the edge of the highway, acid rain. We drive slowly to city, talking calm and low, hoping a psych nurse is on duty. But once we pull in, Dennis refuses to enter, wanders off between streetlights. Back downtown, we check the alley off Bromfield. Best to make a racket walking down Bromfield, sweeping the flash-laden arcs before you to scare away the rats, calling out, Moses, Moses. Maybe we have a message for Moses. Maybe he's unbarred. Maybe some meds await him in the clinic. At the end is a gate you shoulder open that leads to a staircase behind the Orpheum Theater. If we don't find Moses on one of the landings, we'll find someone else, huddled in the pissy, utter darkness, who either knows Moses or doesn't, who either knows or doesn't know where to find him. Changeable and random. Some guys check into detox for the winter, some burrow deeper under blankets. Later, I'll stand over my father as he sleeps under the church halogen. Impossible light. Jeff stays in the van, lets me do this alone. Snow dusts his blanket, his eyebrows, the bag tied to his wrist like a tourniquet. Barred now nowhere inside for him to go. Now every night I could find him. Starlings fill the trees above us. Isn't it late for starlings? Don't they fly south? His chest rises and falls, tiny cracks in the dusting of snow, miniature avalanches, a distant rumble. The halogen's hum fills the sphere of light I inhabit. I cannot remember a way out of this sphere. He breathes in this hum. I breathe in his hum. If his chest still rises, if his blankets seem adequate, then I won't enter this building he has built. If I step into the lobby of his chest, I will sink up to my knees in nothing. I will lose my feet, like traversing a swamp. We had gardeners and chauffeurs growing up, he says. When this is over, I'll be sleeping inside the Ritz, where I belong. I stand on the sidewalk, searching my pocket for the key, embedded in the asphalt below my feet. What does it feel like? Whose filthy body? How far to the palace? Okay, I'm going to read a short passage from my latest book, which is called This is the Night Our House Will Catch Fire. And then we'll move on to Kirstin. Again, thanks for being here. Now, my job as a father, or one of them, is to tell my daughter stories from when I was her age, then to bring her back to show her the source of those stories. So one day she will understand where she's from, what made her. This is the house I lived in when I was your age. This is the salt marsh I wandered to get to school each day. This is Maria's, where I got my sub the nights my mother was working late. I'll just skip a little. For now, the stories I tell my daughter need to be simple, elemental. There was a fire, an animal set it, we all were saved. I know it is incomprehensible. I tell her afterwards I spent a lot of time in the woods behind my grandmother's. I built a tree fort. I set a field on fire. I broke into a house. I stole a scroll. I tell her how my grandmother would pull a plastic cathedral out of a box each Christmas and plug it in, how the entire thing glowed. It's the same with the night our house was on fire. You cannot imagine how beautiful it was to stand on the lawn and see each window lit up. I look into the flame, pure splendor. Not everything is ruins. Maybe my mother set our house on fire not merely to collect the insurance money, but simply to see what it was she was losing. I tell my daughter the story of the last ice age, how one thing led to another, how when that asteroid hit the Yucatan, a column of fire rose up from the earth halfway to the moon, how minerals in the earth were liquefied, thrown into the atmosphere, only to harden and fall like rain. These glass raindrops, which we now call tektites, as they fell to earth, signaled the end of one era and the beginning of another. If not for that asteroid and the glass rain, we'd be dinosaurs now, I tell her, instead of this. Glass rain, I'd have liked to have seen that. It sounds unimaginably beautiful. I'd like to hold a tektite in my hand. My daughter offers to buy me a bowl of them. She even finds some on the internet for $2.49 each. She knows now where I am from, which is where she is from, that town formed by a glacier receding. She's seen it. She's walked it. But the truth is, I am from the bottom of the ocean. That is where my mother found me. She'd swum down to the bottom as a girl. She wasn't planning on coming back up, but there I was, a small, glittering thing. She carried me up to the surface, placed me inside her girl body, and I grew. It was winter when I emerged, the ocean frozen over, the car wouldn't start, the key wouldn't turn in the locks. By the time of the fire, it was the middle of August. My mother looked out at the ocean, counting the waves. Every seventh was big enough to carry us out beyond sight. The town would go on, with or without us. The package store bell would bong when a customer entered, yet it would always be the same customer. It would always be my grandmother. The bank would lock its vault each night, yet someone would always find a way to break in. The record store would still play the latest hit, and sometimes it was a song we still listened to. And I think it's going to be a long, long time. Jimmy and Buddy, the brothers who started Maria's, would still dice their tomatoes and pickles into cubes like nowhere else in the universe. It was all comforting and suffocating, as if we'd never surfaced, as if we were still holding our breath, still searching for that one promised glittery thing. Yet here we are. It is all around us. Thank you.
All right, beautiful. Thank you so much. I am just going to be a disembodied voice until my camera turns back on. Sorry. Okay, here I am. Thank you so much, Nick. Oh, no, there I am. Sorry. So we will see you in just a few minutes for the conversation. So I'm going to put you away for now. Thank you. And up next, we have a reading from Kirstin Valdez Quade. Kirsten is the author of The Five Wounds, which comes out tomorrow, and Night at the Fiestas, which won the John Leonard Prize from the National Book Critics Circle, the Sue Kaufman Prize from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, and a 5 Under 35 award from the National Book Foundation. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Best American Short Stories, the O. Henry Prize Stories, and elsewhere. So please welcome Kirstin Valdez Quade. Hi, Kirsten.
Hi.
Hi. Excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm so grateful to Lauren and Book Review and to Roger Rosenblatt for bringing us all together. And I'm just incredibly excited to be reading tonight with Nick Flynn, I still remember where I was when I read Another Bullshit Night in Suck City, and it blew my mind. And it also remains my favorite title of anything ever, I think. And thanks to all of you for being here. I am going to read from my new novel, which comes out tomorrow, and it's called The Five Wounds. I'll give just a very little bit of background. It started as a short story that was published in The New Yorker. It's set in a fictional New Mexico town, and it centers on Amadeo, who's an unemployed alcoholic ne'er-do-well who is part of a small community of Catholic penitentes, which is a lay community of people whose worship, Catholics whose worship includes physical penance. So he has been chosen to play the role of Jesus in the Good Friday procession, and he is throwing himself into the role. He thinks it's going to transform his life completely. And then his estranged daughter, Angel, shows up, enormously pregnant, and demanding that he support her and step up. So at the end of the short story, which became the opening of my novel, Amadeo, in an attempt to do the best job of playing Jesus possible, asks for actual nails to be used in the crucifixion. But I'll be reading from a section a bit later in the book. It takes place at Smart Starts, which is Angel's teen parenting program, and it's in her point of view. Angel pinches the underside of her chin as she thinks. It's journaling time, and Brianna has told them to make a list of things they each need to make their own and their babies' lives better. The first few are easy. 1, GED or high school diploma and college degree. 2, a support system. 3, a car. 4, a driver's license. 5, a job. Here, Angel is stumped. If she got a job, who would take care of the baby? So she adds 6, free babysitter, a good one. But there is no such thing, not really, not unless your mom or grandma doesn't work. Even Angel knows that. Briefly, she considers her father, then dismisses the thought. Across the room, Christy and Trinity are whispering. They are best friends and knew each other from before Smart Starts. We got pregnant like the same month, they're always telling people, which is either a crazy fluke or an organizational feat. Both possibilities depress Angel. Who'd like to share? Asks Brianna. Today she wears her clunky sandals and a shapeless maroon sweater dress. Jen raises her hand, tucking her silky, mousy hair behind her large white ear, preparing herself for the stage. An education, Jen smiles, anticipating Brianna's praise. A cross dangles from her neck, and in the lobes of those stuck-out ears, diamond studs glint. Even though Angel knows they probably aren't real, knows she could get a pair herself at the mall, she's still jealous. Right, drawls Lisette. Education, I forgot that one. On her left hand, Jen wears a promise ring with a dinky little amethyst. It's my birthstone, she said, as if none of the rest of them were born in months with birthstones. She's going to marry her boyfriend, whom she met at church and who picks her up every afternoon when Smart Starts lets out. He's a senior and works at the after school installing car stereos, and once he's paused at the curb, he never gets out of the car or even looks up, just attends to his own stereo while Jen climbs in. Not that Angel's own child's father is any better than a car stereo installing Christian. Her stomach churns whenever she thinks of Ryan Johnson, the way, in geometry, he always sat in the front row, grimacing up at the board. He always raised his hand to answer questions, but was only correct about 50% of the time. It seemed crazy to Angel to keep putting yourself out there like that. But the next time Mrs. Esposito asked a question, there he was, long, skinny arms swinging in the air. Hey, he told her breathlessly, once in the hall after class. I thought of a name for you, a math name. For weeks, he called her Angle, or sometimes delighting himself still further, obtuse Angle. He was so persistent she felt embarrassed for him, which, along with the tequila shots, explains why she slept with him. Her embarrassment also explains, perhaps, why she hasn't told him the baby is his. Jen sits up straighter in her seat and her frown deepens. Speaking directly to Brianna, she says, "For success, I also need to maintain my relationship with Jesus and make my baby have one too." Angel pictures Jen forcing a recalcitrant toddler into the arms of a horrified Jesus. The Jesus looks exactly like her dad, and she laughs out loud. Brianna catches Angel's eye and betrays the tiniest smile, and Angel's cheeks heat. "Thanks, Jen," says Brianna, and writes education on the whiteboard. "Could you please put up the part about Jesus?" Jen strokes her tidy belly through her pink striped maternity shirt. "I've been entrusted with this beautiful little life, and if I'm going to be a success, I need to love and care for it as Jesus loves and cares for me." Lizette snorts. "Was Jesus loving and caring for you when you were bumping uglies with that dumb boyfriend of yours?" "Lizette," warns Brianna, syllables clipped, but a surge of dislike has already been unleashed among the members of the class. "You're not special, Jen," says Christy. "Yeah," says Trinity, "we're all Christians here." "Ooh, umbers," sing-songs Lizette. "Jen's getting taught." "No," says Jen. "Like half of you are Catholics, and Catholics aren't Christian exactly." "Are you joking?" Angel surprises herself with her cry of incredulity. But after all, she is something of an expert after her father's Good Friday shenanigans. Anyone who believes in Christ is a Christian. It's the main definition. Now Lizette looks over her shoulder at Angel and gives a wry half smile. Angel's happiness is like a ball popping to the surface of a clean pool. It bobs there, glinting in the sunlight. "That's true," says Brianna, "and anyway, I'm agnostic. But let's please stay on task, girls. What's something else you can do to make your future better?" "Sleep," says Tabitha sadly, age 17 and due next month, already possessed of a 19-month-old who is known in the baby room for his powerful lungs and disinclination to nap. "I never get no sleep." "Good, yes. Sleep is essential, self-care in general. Other thoughts?" Yesenia raises her hand. Brianna nods encouragingly. "Marry a rich guy," she says. This sounds good to Angel. Her mother once told her that it's just as easy to fall in love with a rich guy as a poor one. Not that Marissa would know. Along with the rest of his personality deficiencies, Mike isn't rich. The problem, her mother conceded with a sigh, is meeting one. Angel starts to add rich guy to her own list, but catches Brianna's expression. Instead of that smile of bright disapproval with which she usually rewards classroom participation, Brianna presses her lips and gives an equivocating waggle of her head. Marry a rich guy is apparently the wrong answer. "Well," Brianna says, "that's one thought, Yesenia. I like that you're thinking of the practicals, of how to get the resources you need to live day to day. But if you're dependent on someone else for those things, then you aren't developing the skills you need to provide for yourself. And if that rich guy, I don't know, leaves or dies or divorces you, or proves to be a bad partner so that you have to leave him, then you're right back where you started." "But he'd have to give me alimony," Yesenia points out. "He'd have to pay child support." "Sure," snorts Christy, scratching flakes of nail polish off her stubby thumbnail. "Because guys pay child support. Guys are super at that." "He'd be rich. Of course he'd pay. It would be no big deal if he was rich." "If he was rich," Christy says, "he'd have lawyers and he'd know how to get out of it. You wouldn't see a cent." "True," chimes Christy. Brianna's head is tilted thoughtfully. Angel presumes she's trying to work out how to validate Yesenia's point and at the same time crush it and move on. Angel is pretty sure they're all imagining this man in his slim wool suit and narrow black shoes, looking like a Banana Republic model, and it strikes her as unfair that they're passing these judgments on him just because he's square-jawed with soft-focus eyes and a leather wallet filled with platinum cards. Angel also feels sorry for Yesenia, having to defend what is objectively a good idea. Because who's to say Mr. Banana Republic would definitely be a dick? He might be decent. And they're all speaking hypothetically anyway. Any discussion of their futures is by definition hypothetical. So why not let Yesenia marry some hypothetical rich guy who happens not to be a dick? If they're going to be strictly realistic, then yes, Mr. Banana Republic probably has other plans for his life than taking care of Yesenia and her not very attractive 8-month-old infant. And if by some miracle Yesenia does convince him to marry her, then yes, it's probably just a matter of months before he fucks her over. But if they're going to be strictly realistic, then they might as well acknowledge that number 7 on an angel's list, a job, is unlikely to end up being the kind of job that will cover food, rent, health insurance, childcare, utilities, and car payments, and also allow her to sock 10% away into her savings account, at least not at first. Yesenia tries to get up the courage to defend, Angel tries to get up the courage to defend Yesenia. After all, Brianna has told them that it takes a village, and don't underestimate the power of community, and remember, people are resources too. But the thought of contradicting Brianna makes her nervous. Lizette takes a long drink from her water bottle before dropping it hard on the desk. You're the one who said we had to get us a support system, miss, says Lizette. I don't see what's the matter with getting a rich support system. Yes, thanks, Angel. Vindicated, her point exactly. There's nothing the matter with it, Lizette. Please raise your hand. I hope you'll all be fulfilled in your relationships, but today I want us to focus on the things that you right now can do to improve your lives and your babies' lives. We're going to set our goals and lay out a game plan for how to achieve them. She smiles expectantly. Yesenia slouches in her chair, her gold-digging aspirations deflated. All this talk of marriage is depressing. Angel is a kid. She doesn't want to get married, not yet, maybe not ever, not even to a Banana Republic model. She wants to be in her house, her own house, with her mother, wants to make hamburgers in the frying pan and eat them together out on their little concrete patio in the white plastic chairs that warp when you sit. They'd bring the whole jar of pickles, dig them out of the juice with their fingers, the way they used to before Mike moved in and informed them it was disgusting. Number 7, my mom. I need my mom. Thank you so much.
Kirstin, that was so gorgeous. Oh my
Thank
God.
you.
I get tears in my eyes. The book is so amazing. I'm so happy to be here on the night of its appearance. And that passage you read, I'm looking. I mean, you know, everyone's in for a real treat with this book. This book, I think, is just going to be huge and everywhere, and you know, it's such a great book. I just love like how you get into like each character like so deeply, and it's so funny too. It's just like endlessly funny and heartbreaking, like from line to line. Like they're just in this situation that's a difficult situation, and it's so like real. Like, and I love all the characters, even though they do totally fucked up things at times. You know, they totally, you know, I love Amadeo. I mean, he's great, and he does terrible things, you know, like, I mean, not terrible things, but he's an alcoholic, and he fucks up, you know. But you do it with such like compassion, like the writing, it's really gorgeous. I had one thing that I noticed you could sort of talk about a little bit, because people probably don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not that the book begins on like right around now, this time of year, like right on Good Friday, which is coming up, and then it can we give away that it takes place over the course of a year? Is that okay? I'm sorry, I just did. But,
I think that's fine to give away.
yeah. So I mean, that's the whole thing. It's all contained in like a year in the life of this family, like one year where a lot happens, and you know, we get to, you know, as we heard from this, the daughter comes home, 15 and pregnant, the parents are estranged. The father, Amadeo, is living with his mother, and he's embarrassed of that, and he wants to redeem himself. And he wants to redeem himself by doing this thing, which is, you know, to be in the pageant. Is it the passion play? Is it called a passion play, or what do they call it?
Procession.
The procession. Yes. Yeah, it's a reenactment of the crucifixion, and then he like, and then through the whole thing, he like, you know, the scars in his hand are like, you know, are part of the whole story. After that, he just, for a while, he can't use his hands. He's you know, he can't after he's used real nails. Is that a thing that I forget in the book though? Was that a thing that had been done before, or was he the first one to use real nails? Is that like a thing?
He hears a rumor about it. So when I was doing, I mean, it's an old the you know, physical penance and these brotherhoods of penitentes are an old tradition in northern New Mexico and southern California. And when I was doing research about, and the practices persist today. It's but the numbers are much smaller. And I was doing research about the practice in the 19th century when these really were like major community major players in the community. I mean, they were mutual aid societies. They fulfilled all kinds of functions. And there were rumors about possibly at some point someone had actually been nailed to the cross, but they were, there's nothing documented, and it's certainly not a typical part of the worship. But yeah, Amadeo goes too far.
Well, Amadeo needed it, I think. He needed something extreme in order to change his life, in some way. Why do you think Roger put us together?
Well, gosh, there's so many echoes. I mean, I just think about talk about, writing compassionately about characters who have done fucked up things and making us love them. I mean, you do that so beautifully. And I'm so moved in your new book by the relationship between you and your daughter, and the way that develops over the course of the memoir, and the way that the telling of stories is this, it starts with this urgency to tell her these stories so that she'll know who she is and where she came from. And it's so incredibly moving. And, there was a moment, I don't know, am I allowed to do a little spoiler?
Oh, mine's already spoiled. It's been out for a long time. So
there's a moment about 2/3 of the way through when you're driving back from one of your trips to your hometown with your daughter, and she's in the back seat and she cries out, you got to do so many things that I didn't get to do when I was 7. You got to get your own dinner. And that moment, I mean, my tears just sprang to my eyes, because it's this beautiful moment where, the telling of the stories and bringing her here, it's all to communicate, this deeply essential thing about who you are and who you are as a father, and, and who she is. And, this lovely child who's grown up in this warm, safe environment gets something completely different.
Yeah. I know that's the thing that I was relating to with your book too, just like the father-daughter relationship. I mean, that's, I was really thinking that. I don't know if Roger had read your book, but maybe he probably read the story that it came from. So he probably is Angel in the story, the original story?
Angel is, yeah.
Oh, so maybe he's a magician like that. He figured that out to put those together, because it really is, the book really is that This Is the Night Our House Will Catch Fire is like a, it's partly about me trying to understand my mother, trying to understand her, and then realizing my daughter is trying to understand me also, trying to ask like questions, and and me trying to respect those questions and trying to answer them. I think that also, like, I have a feeling there's a political, some political idea in Roger's mind. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just a healing idea to heal the country. But like, your piece deals with like a lot of, like, I mean, in a way it's not direct at all, but there's a lot of things going on. There's a young teenage pregnancy. There's there's just financial stuff, like the how people struggle. I mean, it's really a book deeply about like people that are, would you call them marginalized? Would you call, I mean, they're definitely like, there's not a lot of means in the house. There's not a lot of opportunities. He's like, coming up with a plan to make money and to work. And I just found that so beautiful, and the precision of it, like really what you have to do, like the moment to moment, what you have to do in order to like just put food on the table each day, and to sort of like, when a situation arises, when the daughter comes home and she's 15 and pregnant, and what you do. It related to me too, just because, my mother was also a teenage, she was pregnant when she was a teenager. And that, the rendering of it, like that relationship, like the father and the daughter, and just like you're inside both their minds. You have that omniscient narrator, so you're inside both their minds at different points, and just sort of it's floating around, and sort of getting to see stuff. It was so beautifully rendered, yeah.
Well, I mean, you and I both have worked for social service organizations.
Oh, I didn't
too.
know that. I didn't know that. Where did you work?
I was a grant writer, but and we were focused, I worked for this sort of consortium of nonprofits that was working to raise the quality of childcare for like pre-K childcare and daycare. And so I visited, I mean, I didn't work in a teen parent program, but I did site visits. But yeah, I mean, there is something, you know, we're constantly telling kids, I mean, especially not just kids, but people who do find themselves in these dire situations, you know, the social service organizations and you know, the culture in general is, you know, giving people messages about how they can better themselves and get themselves a better life and, you know, get off the streets. And but I mean, the cards are so stacked against making changes like that. And it's, I mean, it's, yeah. One thing, I was so happy that you read from Another Bullshit Night in Sex City, because like I said, I mean, I loved that book, and I remember where I was. But that passage you read about, you know, I'm going to butcher it, but if you step into his chest, then can you say it again? Because it's so beautiful, and I don't want to butcher it. But that, I mean, that's such a gorgeous passage about, you know, need and how need.
Yeah, well, that's why, and I think the echoes of it, like that piece you read, like I said, like on this list that they're making, like that is a thing that you would do in a social service agency. Make a list of your, you know, what you need and what your goals are, and then ending with my mom, I need my mom, and knowing from what we know about Angel, this is pretty early in the book, that she's estranged from her mom. She left her mom to go live with her father, who she thought that would be a better choice, you know, and it was so moving. So yeah, it's if his chest still rises, if his blankets seem adequate, then I won't enter this building he has built. If I step into the lobby of his chest, I will sink up to my knees in nothing. I'll lose my feet like traversing a swamp. Strange. I try to sort of get like in those moments, like to capture like the surreal nature of a crisis. You know, the sort of disjointed mental thought that you could sort of imagine, like, okay, my father's a building now, and I'm trying to walk into the building, but it's like a dream state, like entering into a dream state at that moment, which it did feel like. It felt like, you know, like encountering my father homeless on the streets, and me for a while being his caretaker on the streets. Like literally, that was my job, to like make sure he was alive on the streets. It was very surreal. Like and for the shelter I worked in, there was, you know, I went and talked to them afterwards when I was writing the book, and they were just like, yeah, we had no idea what to do. We just had never encountered anything like this, where you know, a relative would come in and be there, you know. And now they wouldn't let it happen, actually. I was actually quite lucky that they didn't know what to do, because it allowed me to stay there and work in that hell. Now they would just sort of like not let us work together at all. It would just be inappropriate or something, you know. Maybe they would now, because things are falling apart still, so maybe there wouldn't be enough help they would have to do it, so.
Yeah. I mean, what is that, as somebody who has, you know, worked with population of unhoused people and you know, your father was unhoused for, so I mean, what is it like? I mean, this is a dumb question, but to just read the news and see that this problem all these years later has only gotten worse, and there's so much more need.
Well, it's that thing. I think, you know, we've been put into an impossible situation. Like as a people, like people ask me, like as if I'm an expert on, like, you know, should I give money to a homeless person? And you know, I'm certainly not an expert on that. And you know, it's the reason it's so confusing to us is because it's not a natural situation. We shouldn't have to make that decision. You know, this should be the culture. We should be taking care of this. And it's not something, and it is something the book began in, I began working at the shelter in 1984 when I was 24 years old. And that was sort of the beginning of homelessness as we know it in America. Like there wasn't there wasn't a 10 beds in every little town in America, in every church that had a home, you know, house people that didn't have housing. It just wasn't done. Like we wouldn't have, it was something that was not America. And we just became used to it very quickly. And we began, stepping over. So now with my daughter, she's 13 now, but, we had to tell her very soon, you sort of have to as a parent in any city, like why is there a person sleeping outside? It's an impossible question to answer. Why are we in an apartment and why are they not? And there's no good answer for that really, except that it shouldn't be, it really shouldn't be. So, and there's ways to take care of this. There's direct policies that have contributed to it, which I don't talk about in the book because it's not like that kind of book. But there's direct policies that could definitely take care of this. Yeah. So, I just came back from New Mexico. I was just in New Mexico, as I told you, for a week visiting my wife who's working out there, and it's such a beautiful place, but also like it's a hard place too. It's really hard. Like Albuquerque is a hard city, and it's got hit really hard with COVID, and there's like, it's desperate West. You drive around there and it's the addiction thing. I mean, both our books deal with addiction too. Amadeo is an addict. There's addicts all through all my books. I mean, it's just like that's part of my story. And so it's just really interesting to be in a place to see I think it's one of the poorest states in the nation, isn't it? I think New Mexico.
And there's incredible disparity. There's so much poverty, and then there's just like heaps and heaps of wealth. I think I don't remember the statistics, but like a huge chunk of the land is owned by very few people. That's the way it always is. Like in third world countries, the poorest countries had the most Mercedes, right? Like there's. That's the car that's being driven around. But it's so gorgeous out there too. It's like an unbelievable landscape there. It's so. Is that your landscape? Is that where you like? I mean, because you capture it so well in the book. I mean, I really feel like it was really a pleasure to have this book out there with me. And it's like when I'd travel, I would try to bring a book with me that was written. When I go to Greece, you read the Odyssey, and when you go to France, you read Duras, and you go to you try to read whatever is sort of from that place. So your book was perfect for that landscape. It was just really felt like that landscape. I mean, I was even in the town like Espanola. I was driving through Espanola and all these towns. Is that your landscape? Is that like what you think of as home, or like the ideal landscape, or? Absolutely. I mean, there's something. Yeah, it's elemental. When I touch down at the Sunport, it's like. I mean, for me, it's the North Atlantic coast. It's like a small town in the North Atlantic coast. Like that's my landscape. And in the book, it's like the salt marsh, like the salt marsh.
Yeah.
And the beach with the gorgeous stones that
the stones on it.
are only beautiful when wet. Do you
have them here? Yeah, here's one of them. Yeah.
Oh, they are perfectly round.
Yeah. They're here. Yeah, they're still here. I haven't taken them down yet. Yeah. The book for those of you who have read the book, it begins with these stones on my desk that my daughter gathered from the beach down from in our hometown in Massachusetts. And she gathered so many. She was like 7, and she was just fascinated by these stones, and she just kept picking them up and putting them in the car. So the car started to sink into the sand. It started to like she just wanted every one of the stones. And we have like a lot of them now back in but these are the ones that made it to my desk though. Yeah. But
I love the scene in your book when you return to the house that burned and meet the guy who lives there. And I mean that it's just it's an amazing scene. And his music and the way you the heavy metal and you and your daughter.
He was so great. He was so great. I think his name is Steve in it. He was so great, so generous. Like this guy, part of the book is, for those who don't know, I took 3 trips back to my hometown with my daughter, and the book is sort of built around those. Like your book is structured around like this 1 year between Good Fridays, and what happens in that year. Mine is structured around these 3 trips I took back over 3 years back to my hometown with my daughter. And I took her to places that meant a lot to me each time. The first time was to, where was the first one to? To Mr. Mann's house, to the house of this, this guy I would sort of was fascinated with in my hometown. The second one was to the marsh, the salt marshes. And the third time, and I'd circled around that house every time. Like I'd circled around the house that my mother had set on fire every time. And I just never had gone to it. And then I went there with her and knocked on the door, and he just answered and just invited us in like nothing. It was like he was so generous and so wild too, with the stuff written on the board like, is it time to give a fuck? Like none is, he was divorced. He was living there with his wife's brother. Like it was all sort of, and it was the house I grew up in. This was his house, and the house was unchanged in many ways from when I was there like years ago. It was
It's
so strange.
astonishing that
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
unchanged. How is it returning to the town? Has the town changed? I mean, Maria's is still there.
I thank God. I know Maria's is manna. It's like the holy food. So I go back like once a year. So I have, but I didn't go back for a long time, and I've been going back once a year since like Bullshit Night came out. So my friends invited me back for parties. So yeah.
I didn't want to cut you guys off because I was greatly enjoying this, but we do have some questions. So I would like to get to those from the audience. So if you have a question for Nick and Kirsten, submit it below by clicking Ask a Question, and we will get to it. So this first one is from Ellen. She asks, has the past few years of pain and suffering made it harder or more difficult to write what you write? Could be for either of you.
I'm confused. Is it past few years of pain and suffering? Does that mean like under? I'm not sure. Does you mean under Trump or my own personal suffering or?
That's a good. I would guess. Well, she wrote a follow-up one that says, or Ellen, maybe you can comment. What do you mean? The past few years of pain and suffering. Her follow-up question was, how do you heal and restore your soul after immersing yourself in our desperate, sad human condition? I think she's talking about the past 4 years of the presidency under Trump. Yeah, she just commented. There you go.
I think I always like whenever a new horrible administration takes over, I have, I fall into despair and don't write anything for a while. Like I have a really hard time. Like, when pandemic hit, I couldn't write anything for a while. I'm not like, I can't make something out of suffering right away. It usually takes me quite a while. I usually just suffer. And so, when Trump got in, I mean, when Trump got into power, it was just unbelievable. I was just like, oh, I can't believe this is not possible. This is not possible. And it took me a while to just sort of accept that it was possible and to do some work. But I guess I did do work. At a certain point, work did start coming, and but I had no desire to. I don't even have a desire to say his name, really. I mean, I would prefer just to it be a distant memory, really. But so. Yeah. What about you, Kirsten?
I mean, after the election, I was so depressed, and I had 350 pages of my novel, and I told my then partner that I had to just throw it all away, and because the world was changed and everything was terrible. And
what changed? What was that book? How did it change?
No, I didn't. Fortunately.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
I was talked down and told just finish your book.
Okay.
So,
I thought you wrote a whole new book. I thought you wrote a whole new book based on. Okay.
No. But I'm interested in this. How do you heal and restore your soul after immersing yourself in our desperate, sad human condition? I don't know that. I mean, I have sort of a two-part answer. First is I don't know that the writing. I think in some ways it's through the writing. Although I'm not a person who believes that writing is therapeutic necessarily. What writing has done for me is when I have characters who I really judge harshly, and I really judged Amadeo harshly, and I wanted him punished, and I wanted him mocked, and I wanted him, to be taken out, really. You can't spend so much time with a character on the page without beginning to feel for them and see their full humanity, and to come to, love them in some way. I mean, it's just what happens when you spend that much time. And to be in his point of view, I had to feel some empathy. So that, but that he's a fictional character. So, the question is, can I do that thing with, real people in the world? And that's an open question.
But I think like a book like yours can teach someone the value of that, though, of a seemingly irredeemable character that, but still like seeing the humanity. Just, I mean, the arc of his year is just remarkable. It's just like this remarkable arc. It's not like, it's not like, some, some unbelievable thing happens to him, but just his like what happens, his sort of internal transformation is so gorgeous.
Thank you. I mean, I find it incredibly hopeful that we can change, that human beings can change. Change is really, really hard, but you can't have a book without having character change, whether it's memoir or fiction. And
yet at the end, he's still recognizably Amadeo. At the end, he's not like, he's still the exact same person. Only, now he has like, scars on his hands, and he's like gone through something. He's gone through something, which is also beautiful. I'll just answer it with, I have at the back of Another Bullshit Night in Sex City, I answered this question in a way, was because people had asked me questions and they asked me to write something for the paperback. So I wrote, was writing this book cathartic for you, which is something people would ask. And I wrote, in my experience, whatever happens clings to us like barnacles in the hull of a ship, slowing us slightly, both uglifying and giving us texture. You can scrape all you want. You can, if you have money, hire someone else to scrape, but the barnacles will come back, or at least leave a blemish on the steel. But that doesn't answer like how you take care of yourself. I mean, I do think you need to take care of yourself, like in the midst of, while you're creating a project like this. I'm sure there were things you did to, I would hope there were things you did to take care of yourself. I know there were things I did, lots of things. Mostly I tried to take care of myself and wrote little, tried to take care of myself more than I wrote sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right.
Writing fiction is one way of taking care, transforming experience into something else.
Yeah, I don't feel that with memoir stuff. I don't feel it. I feel it's like dangerous. Like I feel like I need to like really like be careful with it, and just do it in small doses, just because it's diving into your own personal psyche. I think can be dangerous. So, yeah.
All right, we have, this is one for Nick from Genevieve. She says, I've been reading the latest memoir, and at some point, a part of me felt like, wow, all these years, all these memoirs, even Bullshit Night, it was never about the father. All of it, the addictions, the issues with relationships, it was the mother all along. Did a part of you feel like that writing this latest book, a sense of coming full circle?
Yes, thanks, Genevieve. Yeah, that's the serious. It does seem like the first book is Another Bullshit Night in Sex City for the memoirs is about my father, me and my father. But really, even in that book, like the ghost of that, and we sort of talked about that when we were making the film, like that my mother was the animating force behind both of us, behind my father and behind me. Like she was the one who, why I ended up in the shelter. She's why he ended up in the shelter in various psychic reasons, and yeah. So this book the last one was harder to write because it was really going deeply into that. Like, it was almost easier to write the first book. I mean, it wasn't easy, but it was like, I didn't know my father. Like my father was not part of me in the same way. My father was, he was absent. He wasn't around. I mean, I have half his DNA, so it's, terrifying in that way, but he wasn't like a daily influence as much as my mother was. And my mother was wonderful. She was great. And she was also very complicated, as if you read the book, you'll see. Yeah.
Okay. Let me see. We have, I think this is another question for you about Suck City. How do you integrate different genres in one memoir? This one's from Shanu.
Shanu. Yeah. Another Bullshit Night City was I I'd published a couple books of poetry before that, and I sort of approached it as a book of poetry. Like I didn't, and in poetry, I mean, not all books of poetry do this, but playing with form is just sort of can be part of the whole thing. It's not like a coherent narrative necessarily. You're sort of trying different material. You're trying different ways to approach the material, like each different purchase up the mountain. You're trying to, you don't want to keep going up the same path every time. You want to sort of find another way up it. So, and sometimes form can do that. And so it came out about that. I didn't know for a long time what kind of book this would be, that it would be prose. And sometimes I think that I've just tricked people into reading poetry. There's passages in here that if I read them, people think I'm reading a poem, and I like that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kirsten, I said I was going to call you my sister's name. For those of you watching, my brother and sister are named Nick and Kristen. So this has been a very tricky night for me to make sure I'm getting Kirsten's name right. And I knew I was going to screw it up once. What comes first for you, your plot or your characters?
Oh, definitely characters. I wish plot came earlier in the process than it does, because it would save me a lot of wrong turns.
Yeah, but it seems like that's part of the joy of it, though, too, because it does feel like reading this book. It feels like life. Like you don't know what's going to happen next. Like you don't really know. Like there's things that have to happen. Like you assume that the baby's going to be born, but it's also like it seems like really like, well, what's going to happen after that? Like it doesn't feel like. I mean, I think that's actually great that you didn't have the plot myself, but I know it might have been easier. But
I've had teachers who've basically said to get the plot, you just have to really listen to the characters, because if you're paying attention, they'll lead you to it.
Yeah.
But I always want something. I don't know. I want something big and exciting to happen, and usually that doesn't work.
But it does. No, it did in your book. Big, exciting things happen in your book.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thriller. So,
Rita Dove says, "Hooray for tricking those readers into poetry, Nick." So good job. You have praise from Rita.
I see Jill. I see Jill McCorkle was here too, and we just read her story on magic words in one of my classes, which is such a wonderful story. So thank you, Jill McCorkle. Yeah.
Oh yes, she is tuning in. Who do you both like to read? I'm always very curious about that. What other writers like to read?
I mean, I'm just pulling something off my shelf right here. Do you guys know Sarah Centilles? Do you guys know her? This is like a really great book. This is called Dry Your Weapons. It's like she brings like art and political activism together, like where it comes. This is a gorgeous book. Yeah, I'll put that out there. Cool. And she has a new one coming out. She has a new one coming out like next week or something about adoption. Yeah.
What about you, Kirsten? What do you read?
I read all kinds of things. Right now I'm reading Allie Smith's Spring and Julia Alvarez's new book, Afterlife. And these are both great.
Do you have a favorite underappreciated writer? We should get some more acclaim than they maybe do.
Yeah, I'm looking around my studio here for my Why don't you go? Do you got anyone? You want to
I'm sure I do. You know what? I always freeze during these questions. It's as if I've never read a single book in my life. I read a book recently by Sybil Bedford, and I was not at all familiar with her, and was really blown away by it. She writes about the Europe in pre-World War I and post World War II, all over.
Do you know Susan Steinberg? Do you know her work? Yeah, she's got a couple of beautiful books. I just love the way she puts characters together, and just like they're really sort of like like dialogue, but it's all very fractured and very sort of like woven together. It has a lot of energy to it. I really love those books. So
She tricks people into poetry too.
yeah. I guess that is. Maybe that's why I love it. Yeah. I mean, I read mostly poetry. I mean, so that's mainly what I'm reading. So yeah.
That's good. April is Poetry Month, so you'll probably get to read a lot more poetry soon. All right. Well, it is 8:00. I think that this is a great place to end. I want to thank you both, Nick and Kirsten, for being here tonight and reading with us and participating in Write America. I want to thank everyone who tuned in this evening. Lloyd Schwartz is here. He's another one of our writers who's going to be reading with us very soon. And thank you, of course, to Roger Rosenblatt. Without him, we wouldn't have these wonderful conversations to look forward to every Monday night. So I hope that I see you all back here next week, Monday at 7 p.m. for the next episode of Write America. And until then, we'll see you next time. Bye.